Hello and welcome to the Zaffie Show. We're happy to be here and hope that you will join us. When I stepped outdoors this morning in my driveway, it just took my breath away. The sun is warm. It's February. A week has already gone by in February. The sun was just sparkling all over that beautiful white snow. I know snow can be a pain in the neck, but this morning it was beautiful. I just stood there. It was comfortable, didn't feel cold. I loved it. And another thing I like about February is all the love and sweetheart and chocolates and candy and flowers, and I love all that. And another thing, it reminds me when I was young in grade school, and we used to make bags and put Valentines in them, and we'd count to see who had the most. I loved that. We'd be walking home from school on a country road. Was beautiful. Yeah. I have nice memories, and I'm thankful for that. I'd like now to introduce Kenneth Capron. And
Karen Banning.
what's your last name?
Banning.
How do you spell that?
Banning.
And they are with Memory Cafe. And that's a new movement, and I think it's wonderful, and I'm going to let them tell us about it. Ken, how did you get interested?
Well, I have a diagnosis of dementia, and some of us in a support group thought at one point that we wanted to do something more social than a support group gathering. And so a friend of mine, Donna Beveridge, who lives here in Biddeford, we just said, let's just do it. You know, we rather than waiting for somebody else to make it happen, we'd heard about the movement. We'd heard about memory cafes. Nobody had started anything in Maine, and there's only a couple in New Hampshire. So we said, well, let's just throw it together. Let's share a cup of coffee with some friends. And so we got started, and actually Biddeford is the very first place we started about a year ago. And then we expanded to Portland. But it's a national or international movement. It originated in the Netherlands in the late 90s. Dr. Meissen started the first cafe. And it started out as just simply a social gathering for people who either had dementia, and dementia can be there's 50 different types of dementia, but Alzheimer's is like 40% of that. But anybody who had any connection with dementia, whether you were a patient or family or a caregiver of somebody with dementia, even providers or anybody who has any connection, it's a place where, once for 2 hours once a month, you can go and hang out with folks who are in a similar situation. So you're not faced with the stigma that other people are going to look at you as being different, because the fact is that people with dementia often have difficulty communicating in a normal way. So it started as a social thing, and a cup of coffee is what made that happen. In England, their National Health Service actually adopted the Memory Cafe and funded the Memory Cafe in every town in England. I'm not expecting the government to do that here in America, but there are about 180 cafes across the country. There's no two that are alike. Each one is whatever the participants want it to be. There are some that just are conversation about how to connect to different services, because there are so many services that are available to people with dementia and their families.
Don't you think it's nice therapy to get together with someone and talk about?
Well, the fact is that a conversation is one of the most challenging cognitive processes, and so conversation stimulates a lot of areas of the brain. The brain works that it takes in information, it processes it, and then it puts it out. Well, listening is taking information in. Trying to understand what people are saying is processing, and then responding to what people say is the out process. So there's all these areas of the brain that get stimulated, more so than certainly watching TV, No offense. I hope they watch the show. um, but you know, a good conversation is worth a million words.
You know, too, you can say something, and she's going to get one meaning, and I will get another. And I always get the wrong meaning. I always misinterpret everything. My daughter says my mother right over her head.
So you know, we decided once we got one in Biddeford and one in Portland, we started to get other people who were curious and wanted to do something similar, and so the 2013 was a year of building for us here in Maine, and I set up a nonprofit called MemoryWorks, which is our goal is to set up these cafes everywhere that we can so that people have a place to go and connect with other people who know what services are available and find out what they need to know. I mean, there's legal, medical, you know, housing issues, there's food issues, it just goes on and on. There's so many there's dozens of services available, but no matter where you go right now in the system, you only probably get information about one or two. If you go to your doctor and if you're lucky enough to get a diagnosis, which is a challenge in itself, that doctor's not going to tell you that you should probably go talk to your AAA, your agency on aging. They're not going to tell you, you know, that you should go talk to a therapist or a neurologist or whatever. They're going to send you on your way. You've got a diagnosis. Thank you. And so we're hoping to use the Memory Cafe as a point of outreach, so that we can provide a service to folks while they help themselves in the cafe. Now, across the globe, there have been some interesting things that have happened in cafes. Some people have started exercise cafes, so that seniors who are
I believe in that.
Who are inclined to sit at home. I mean, if you have dementia, you don't get a good picture of the world. You get kind of a tunnel vision of what's going on. But getting out and getting some exercise is another, probably the second most important stimulus for people with dementia. But getting that blood flowing and stuff, and you know, getting people involved physically is really important. So some places have done exercise cafes. Some cafes do crafts, and some do music. Some do just the whatever comes to mind. But
whatever that person likes, so they might have a talent.
One of the interesting things that I think is really neat, I love the creativity of Great Britain and Australia, but they started doing croquet at some of their cafes. On good days, you get outside and
that's fun.
You know, it's not about winning or losing; it's about the exercise and the camaraderie of playing together. But they've created this thing called Jiminy Wicket, which is Jiminy Wicket. It's a worldwide competition in croquet for people with dementia. And this past year, they had the very first championships. Well, they actually had two. One was in Australia, in Melbourne, and one was in New York City at the Rockefeller Center. And they had croquet championships.
Well, you have to concentrate when you play croquet.
You sure do. Especially when you're holding a mallet that could be a weapon of choice. So the creativity is there for people to figure out what they want to do at their cafe. When we opened the cafe in Presque Isle, the first one up there, they were fascinated with puzzles, because we had some puzzles which were designed for people with dementia. You know, they're not the 500 piece; they're like the 50 piece puzzles, which are great for and make great gifts for Christmas. But there's a lot of things, a lot of tools that people can get that are designed specifically for people with dementia.
It's good to know.
So they like that. You know, we're looking at all the options. I think we're going to talk with Karen in a bit, but certainly her experience with drumming is a real attractant. Obviously, it's been popular in the senior centers and places that she's gone, and to that extent, let me just introduce the audience to Karen Banning, because Karen came to her very first cafe last Monday in Kennebunk, and was so enthused that by the end of the day, I had a phone call saying, "Ken, you now have a new cafe in Biddeford." And it's like, wow, some people make things happen. And so I'm curious. I mean, we've not really had a lot of conversation about this, but I'm be interested in hearing what Karen had to say about what on earth, what bug bit you, and how, what was your motivating factor?
Well, I had met you a couple times or seen you across the room at some of the health network meetings.
Oh.
And I picked up some of the flyers. We're allowed to bring flyers to these meetings and hand out with our information. And I had it on my calendar. I feel so bad. I had it on my calendar for probably 2 months and finally had the time to go. I had no idea what I was going to find. And I walked in, there were about 8 people there Monday, and it was incredible. It was caring, people that cared. There were a couple of people from our industry, and I think 3 women who had husbands that either they had lost or were dealing with dementia, and the care that people showed to help them, just in this little meeting, was incredible. It was incredible. They felt so comfortable, they told their stories, and we listened, and we offered support. Have you tried this agency yet? That kind of thing. And Ken is just a character, and he was sitting next to me. So after some of the people left, we just sat there and just kept talking about the cafes, and I just thought it was a great idea. And he mentioned the Biddeford one. He wanted to start the Biddeford one again. And I went to Elements in Biddeford, my favorite place for chai and hot chocolate. My girlfriend and I go there.
Where is Elements?
Oh, it's right on Main Street. It's on a corner.
265 Main Street.
Is that where they have the nice sandwiches?
They have books.
Oh,
They
Hugh,
have,
that's
books
up across from the library.
It's
Yes.
the one with all the glass windows.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have books.
That's a nice idea. I
Great
like
Yes.
tables. They have a really big table, which we'll probably use. Great parking nearby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Easy access. Yeah, I love it. I was there yesterday checking it out, and the owner is very, very receptive.
Michael, I walked up and I just said, I have this great idea. I had met Ken, and I thought this is the perfect place because I love your chai. And he
That's
said,
healthy.
okay. And I said, what day? And by the time I went home, we had the day, the time. We have no idea what we're going to do yet. Ken has mentioned all these ideas for these other cafes. And I called Ken and I said, okay, we got one.
And it a lot of times.
Leave it to the women. I'm sorry.
Now I'm speechless. Fortunately, I grew up with 2 older sisters who taught me who to respect. so I learned that a long time ago. But women are a driving factor in any work that involves people.
You know what? Seriously, more and more, the women.
I think it's always actually been that way. If you remember, there used to be quilting circles, and there's still a lot of book clubs, and there's even some investment clubs that are strictly women, and they're just more social for some reason than
I know
us.
at church the women bring in the money.
I hadn't thought of that.
You mean through events? Do you mean through events or their pocketbook?
Events. And times have changed. It used to be fashion shows and things like that, but now it's luncheons, dinners.
Yeah, there is certainly a good opportunity for churches to get involved with any aspect of human interaction.
Now you said that we have a senior lunch every Thursday.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Where's this?
At St. Demetrius Church in Saco now, on Bradley Street.
Interesting.
And we have the church nurse come, and she does that. And Galushi comes, Marilyn comes. She has spoken there.
Interesting.
Yeah. On Thursdays.
Every Thursday?
Every Thursday. And one Thursday they have a dinner, but the other time's just a little lunch.
One of my hopes for the memory cafes, let me step back. We have 9 going on 10 cafes now in Maine, which puts us 3rd in the nation for number of cafes in the state. And one of the good things about the cafes here in Maine is that MemoryWorks is trying to keep some organizations, some common marketing. We don't want to tell people what to do with their cafe, but we do want to help promote across the board, so we all work together in that respect. Great collaboration between, in this case, Karen's working for Caring Companion Home Care.
Yeah, I see that on here.
Kenny Bunk has Helen Harvey of In-Home Senior Services. We've involved the people from Gorham House and Century Hill, and just there's actually a lot of collaboration, so this isn't costing anybody anything in essence. I would like eventually to get to a point where the places where we hold the cafes, we can maybe make the coffee discounted or lunch discounted or some sort of arrangement with the establishment. If we can bring them enough business, would they be willing to give us special pricing?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of seniors aren't sitting on a bundle of cash, and they nowadays we're looking at living to be 90 or 95.
We're living longer.
And we didn't set aside retirement money to take us that far. So there's I think it's a good thing to do if we can find ways that really help seniors with other things than besides just the conversation.
That day they have a lady comes from UNE and they do therapy. They do exercise, and they sit down and do it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we have in the Portland Cafe, which we're rebuilding. We actually are going to have 2 occupational therapy interns from UNE who are going to be helping with the cafe. So there are, UNE is very active in the geriatric field and especially dementia care. That's where Marilyn Gallucci has really made a big impression.
She's wonderful.
She is. And so every time I turn around, I'm making connections, and I'm an opportunist. I think I've said that to everybody I meet, but it's about making connections and being there and saying, oh, you could really connect with these folks. Let's put you together. Mm-hmm. And often a cup of coffee is all it takes. So I've kind of rambled about this, but our goal by the end of this year is to have 35 to 50 somewhere across the state. There's a real need in northern Maine because it's so rural that people in these outlying towns can't get to senior centers or social groups. And if you've got the stigma of dementia, which we still look upon as being a mental illness rather than a physical illness, it is a physical illness in almost every case. But it used to be associated with state hospitals and in sanitariums and insane asylums.
I know, I wonder, we have Alzheimer's now. Didn't we have it 50 years ago?
We called it senility. Mm-hmm. We still do. A lot of people still say, oh, you're just getting old. When I very first got my diagnosis, or before I got my diagnosis from my doctor, he told me for several years that I was just getting old. And it wasn't until things started to really hit limits that we ended up getting all the right testing and stuff. But I had to go to Boston to get the testing.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
But you know that you have dementia.
I do. And what happens with a lot of times, there's many ways that you can know if you have a problem. But for me and some other people that I know, we sort of hit a wall. We can be going along fine for an hour or two, and then just smack into a wall, and our brain just sort of just.
What's it do?
It's like getting really tired really quick, and like you struggle just to keep focused on what you're doing, which is why I won't drive long distances very often, because I can't guarantee concentration on the way back, and that's a challenge. So that has been a limiting factor in what I can do.
That's interesting.
Well, driving is a big issue, and not just for dementia, but for everybody. But for people with dementia, imagine what it's like to be going along in life and suddenly, and you drive everywhere nowadays. You go to the grocery store, you go to the park, whatever. Imagine losing that right, that ability to be independent, and having to rely on, if there is one, a public transportation system. imagine wanting to go to the grocery store now on a snowy day, and you got to stand out at the bus stop, whereas before you used to hop in the car and just go. That's a very restrictive
I
time
think that's
of
one
life.
of the worst things.
Yep. People are afraid of that.
I am.
That's why a lot of people don't go to a doctor, because some doctors will actually report, that you're struggling with memory impairment, and the state will take your license away. We actually have had that happen. One of the gals at the Kennebunk Cafe talks very often about the fact that she lost her license, and she had to take the written test 6 times before she passed it, and had to do the driving test and passed it on the 3rd time to get her license back.
Well, that's really for your own safety, too.
I agree.
And other people.
But it's that loss of independence. I mean,
oh, tell me, I bet.
Imagine if you had to wait for a bus to get you here to the studio.
Even if I don't leave the house, I want to know my car is right there.
Exactly. That's a
I
security
want to know
blanket.
it's there, even if I don't go.
Exactly. And we know that the state's had problems with its transportation program.
I know, I've read that in the paper.
So it becomes a critical issue for people with dementia. This transportation, this getting to places, even getting to support groups and memory cafes can be a problem.
I read that in the paper, but dementia never entered my mind.
Well,
With my husband, I used to take him to the doctor, and the doctor said he has dementia. I said, no, he doesn't. But in the doctor's office, he wouldn't talk. If the doctor said, well, what's the problem? He wouldn't, nothing. If I didn't speak for him.
well, and that, and the new HIPAA laws actually kind of put a wall between you and your spouse when it comes to talking about healthcare issues, because the doctor can't share information about your spouse without the spouse's specific authorization. And so there's some people who may be a partner in another person's life, but they're kind of shut out from access.
I wonder if he knew he had dementia.
It's hard to tell.
And another time he was dehydrated. And, oh my goodness, we thought it was the end. So we called 911 and we went, and the doctor said he's dehydrated, and they gave him water, and he was fine. So,
there are very few symptoms that are easy to diagnose, but there are some telltale things. People with dementia, Alzheimer's specifically, have a change in their walk and their gait, and it's hard to detect unless you've seen it before. There's actually some subtle things like difficulty with swallowing. People who tend to be eating and then something gets down the wrong tube. If you see that happening a lot, there's a possibility that they're having some cognitive issue, because that's an indicator. Ringing in the ears can be an indicator.
How could that be an indicator? Because you don't control that.
But your brain does, and if your brain is starting to develop plaques, it may not. Some of those automatic functions may not function as well as they should.
So then, if something goes down the wrong way, it's your brain. It's not you.
It is.
But my brain is me.
Yes.
Repeatedly, not just once or twice.
Yeah, over a period of time. What we look for.
You know what? All these things, I have a little bit of everything.
Join the club. What most people look for, and this is true for seniors in general, but certainly with people with dementia, activities of daily living, and that's a well-defined group of activities defined by the government, about being able to care for yourself and so forth. If you are unable to perform 3 out of 5 activities of daily living, then there's a good chance that there's a medical cause for that, and related to some sort of either dementia or some other medical cause. Now we're finding that things like Parkinson's is associated with dementia. We find even MS can be connected. There's so many connected ways.
I read an article about diabetes. They think that diabetes might be connected.
And well, there's just so many articles
almost
now.
Everything is then.
They're just beginning. The federal government this is probably the 2nd year when they've started to really pour money into the Alzheimer's disease. They've spent a lot of money on cancer, and heart disease and stuff like that, but the federal government has never poured money into research in Alzheimer's and dementia. So that's a good thing. They passed a national Alzheimer's plan a couple years ago that has really woken some people up, thanks to Senator Collins. That's really woken some people up at the national level. So we're starting to get some funding for research and programs.
It would be good if they knew how to prevent it.
They don't understand the mechanism, especially for Alzheimer's. They don't understand the mechanism right now. They just don't know what's causing those plaques, and we don't even know if the plaques are what's causing the lack of functioning in the brain.
There's a lot of research being done lately. I saw one on vitamin E the other day, that they think lack of vitamin E might contribute.
I read that too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know.
And D, they mentioned D too.
Exactly. I think it's D3, I think is the, and as if I know anything about vitamins. I know burgers and fries.
And yeah.
and Pepsi.
Was that Pepsi?
Pepsi.
I'm sorry.
So no. I mean, there's so many articles that come out. I mean, I probably get dozens of articles every day that talk about new things that are coming out about Alzheimer's and dementia. What works? What doesn't work? When I first started going to support group, I had read about coconut milk and coconut oil as being something that a lot of people get some benefit from. But at the support group, the leader said, that's hogwash. That's...
All you have to tell me is coconut oil, or anything is going to be good and it's going to work, and I'll try it.
Well, that's one of the things that we encourage is don't listen to no. Try it if you read about it and you want to find out if it benefits you. It may benefit you and not somebody else. So try it. Just try it. Alternative medicine, I think, has as much viability as some of the traditional medicine. But traditional doctors generally don't have a way to treat dementia.
I think exercise. If you exercise, it does something. You can go in feeling sad and you come out.
The nice thing about dementia, there are some real positives. Like, if you see a movie, you immediately forget that you saw it, so the next time you see it, it's the first time.
That's true.
It's so cool. But, if you exercise in the morning and you forget that you exercise, you may exercise in the afternoon. I'm being facetious, obviously,
yeah.
but there are some advantages to forgetting what's happened to you on a day-by-day basis.
I think that awareness is increasing now. And there's a thing they're calling in our industry the silver tsunami. And it's because the baby boomers are now getting to that age where they're beginning to experience dementia, or they're aware that their parents are. And I think that's why awareness is increasing.
Well, we did a conference last fall on the silver tsunami, the economics of the silver tsunami. And just for your listeners' sake, we're projected to have a shortage of direct care workers in Maine by 2020 of 5,000 shortage. That's 5,000, not enough people to take care of the people who are going to need care.
And we're going to have more and more.
We have no plan on the table now to create or to fill those 5,000 jobs. We have no plan whatsoever. We're also expecting to be 5,000 beds short. Now, over the past 2 decades, the number of nursing home beds in this state has declined substantially. But now we're in a mode where we're going to have to create more beds. And who's going to pay for that? If we're creating beds for people who are on Medicaid, Medicaid reimburses very little for long-term care. And so that's a whole separate issue, this financial issue, that where are we going to get the money to create Medicaid beds when they pay so little to begin with? And it's not like the state has we haven't found the end of the rainbow yet, let's put it that way.
It's just beginning.
We've already cut services, but now we're going to ask for even more for the people who are aging, who have dementia, who have other age-related illnesses. And we're already seeing the shortage of workers. We can't find enough direct care workers in general. I think our strongest hope for that is looking outside the country for people. Well, I think your organization hires people from Haiti.
Uganda. We have some
Uganda.
people from Uganda. This is our Metro West office, and it's basically the workers that live in and around Boston. And we have a wide range.
Yep.
We have a
So
wide
we're
range.
going to have to be really creative, and every state's going to have the same problem. So it's not like we're going to be able to say, oh well, let's just get some folks from New Hampshire to come to Maine and be caregivers. We're going to have to work to find people who are willing to work in probably one of the worst paid jobs, one of the most boring jobs, of being direct care workers.
You have to be special.
I disagree with that.
Okay, and that's
You
good.
might think it's boring. It's not boring.
Well, but
You know-
to the average person,
It takes a special person.
yeah.
I think it takes a special person. I don't think I could do it, but I see what our workers do, what our caregivers do, and it's amazing. And one of the things we ask on our interview is, why did you get into this industry? And the answers are so heartwarming, you could almost cry. They cared for their grandparents and they saw that they had this, affiliation with them. They love elder care. And we have online visit reports at my company. And we read those reports, and the rapport that a good caregiver can develop with a person is incredible. They create art with them. They bring in music. We have one woman who sings gospel music with her, the woman that she cares for. And they love their job. I think it is a calling, like some other things are. But to hear these stories from young people that are in their 20s going to nursing school and they have this job part-time, they love it. They absolutely love it. So it's not like they're doing it out of necessity. They're drawn to it.
And let's hope that we can continue to encourage young people to go into the care industry wherever it is. We need more nurses. We need many more doctors. We need all that. And we're kind of a little off topic, but this is the kind of conversation we would have at a memory cafe.
It's all part of it.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about your drumming?
Sure.
Yeah.
Everyone's thinking, what does that have to do with
Yeah,
this?
I want to know what drumming is.
It's great therapy.
I've been hand drumming for 15 years, and I'm talking about hand drumming with an African drum, which is, people may know it's an hourglass shape. And I got the idea to combine my personal life with my professional life, which is working as a director for a home care agency. So as I went to meet people in my industry, I love to meet people in the industry. They're incredible people. They are so caring. Even in administration, they're caring. A lot of them are nurses that have risen to administration. All of a sudden, I got an idea of, hey, would your recreation director or your recreational therapist be interested in a drum circle? What's a drum circle? And I bought a few smaller drums that residents could hold on their laps, and I started at the Brain Trauma Center in Kennebunk. And I was afraid that the noise would be overwhelming, so I asked before I went there. I went in, I handed out the drums, and I tell people I was immediately hooked. The Brain Trauma Center is not only brain things like dementia, they may find dementia there, but people that have been in accidents and lost limbs, and so we had a wide variety, 10 people maybe, in wheelchairs. Some could walk, but you could tell there was a cognitive problem. And some of them drummed. Some of them could not keep in beat with me. Some of them just held the drum, and I could tell they were, feeling the shape and that kind of thing. Some would not take a drum. And just the few that I connected with, it was incredible. There was one man in a walker, and he could speak, but I couldn't understand what he was saying. And I said, what did he say? And the aide turned around and said, he said this was his best day ever here. And my heart just melted. I'm going to be doing this. And it's just grown so much.
That's wonderful.
It's incredible. So there's a lot of places where I go once a month now. I'm starting to recognize the residents. And I tell people that if I have 15 people, 2 fall asleep, 2, the noise really bothers them, and the aides will take them out. But the rest are a captive audience, so to speak. And I'll have at least a third or a half that will drum with me. And I've developed this little system of, it's called mnemonics, where you say a little phrase, and that's the beat that you drum to. And I've got all these little tricks now. I've started being myself, so it's fun for them. I smile a lot. I do eye contact. I was so nervous in the beginning, but now it's becoming second nature to me. And one of them is called, I like chocolate ice cream. Well, as soon as I say the phrase, they start smiling, but they all can do that beat. So I'll say it about 8, 10 times, and I'll stop saying it. And do you know, they just keep going. It's incredible. It's just incredible. And I think it's a basic thing, a basic human nature thing. Ken was saying earlier about the mother's heartbeat, and that we call that the heartbeat.
That was good.
That's cool.
I'm trying to get him to come to one. I only met him Monday.
Do you
but
have to have any rhythm to do that?
Everyone says, not everyone. Few people say, you know what, I would love to do that. I have no rhythm. I said, give me 10 minutes. Give me 10 minutes with you. You can do a basic one, you know. And I was telling you earlier that I tell beginners, don't worry, you cannot drum loud enough for us to hear you. Or some people are too shy to do it, you know, and I'll lean over and say, do you want me to show you how to make it louder?
Do you do it with your hands? Or?
Yes, hands. We do have beaters, and we have things like tambourines. We have wooden blocks. We have cowbells. We have all kinds of things. So if I see someone's having trouble holding the drum, I'll take over this. I have this little bracelet with bells on it, and I'll say, would you rather wear this? Well, almost everyone can move their hand.
What a nice idea.
Yeah, it's really fun. I learned so much. It's that corny teacher thing. I learned so much from them. They don't know what I'm learning, I guess, but I walk out of there saying, you know what? Let me try this one next time, or it's just really interesting.
It's real fun at family get-togethers.
Some of them refuse to do it. Kind of slide it in there sometimes.
Oh, that sounds so cool. I mean, and it's stuff like that. I hope you do some of that at your cafe. Speaking of which, the cafe, again, is at Elements, 265 Main Street. What a great little place.
I know where it is.
Do you?
Yeah, I've peeked where I looked in the window.
You know the owner's name?
Michael.
Michael.
In
And
fact,
it's second Thursdays at 11 a.m. So your ladies at lunch can come over after they finish eating. They can come over for entertainment.
Is it 11 a.m. or noon?
11 a.m.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Because I was worried. But, you know, it's always hard to start things at noon. So that's cool. I'm really, that works out beautifully. And you'll see a sign like we've got over here, the yellow sign with the purple. We'll have one of those for the cafe. So it's sort of a universal identifier. That cup of coffee is what we're trying to use here in Maine to identify Memory Cafe. And so hopefully people will keep an eye open. We've got cafes right now in York Harbor at Sentry Hill, Kennebunk at the Seed and Bean, Biddeford will be Elements. I'm going to miss a few. Gorham at the Gorham House, Auburn at Clover House. Portland is probably going to be at the Park Danforth. We're working on that right now. On Stevens Avenue, right near UNE. We've got 2 in Presque Isle that the Agency on Aging in Presque Isle runs. There's the
I can see them.
Spectrum Generations is setting one up in Waterville at the Muskie Community Center. We've got probably one going into Kittery as a result of your email to the large group. Some folks in Kittery wanted to set one up. I've probably got a waiting list of 30 to 35 locations. If I just had more of me, or maybe a little bit of funding, we could probably make a lot more headway. Mm-hmm. Bangor is just starving for these things because, as they say, when you get more rural,
you know what I can see why they would like puzzles up there.
How true.
I'm serious.
Well, I wonder how many people have ever been to like Presque Isle because
I haven't, but I know a lot of people who
their
came
whole
from
economy
there.
is driven by McCain Industries, you know, who do the vegetables, and you know that's the big employer up there. But when I was driving up to Presque Isle, it's about a 5-hour drive at high speeds from Portland. Actually, when you get above Bangor, it's 75 on the turnpike, not 65. But when I was driving into Presque Isle, there was an Amish wagon with wagon. I didn't know we had Amish people in Maine. So it's good for me, it's good to get out and experience all these other locations. I mean, I was born in Eastport, but I don't know a lot about the county or Washington or Aroostook counties, and so it helps to learn. But that whole area, and I'm sure the Rumford area, a lot of the places that are not part of the big cities, really could use some things. And to create a memory cafe, all you need is a really cozy coffee shop type place, or some facilities, a senior center, willing to give you 2 hours once a month where you can have people come in with dementia, where they can be by themselves and kind of talk amongst each other and share stories and maybe activities.
And you have the locations and the times on your website.
On the website, MemoryWorks.org, and there's a great definition of what a memory cafe means in America. The British model, as I mentioned earlier, the Britain has one in every town. They have a little bit more of a clinical aspect, which if I can get some grant funding, I probably will try to do here in Maine. But you know, if we could do 35 to 50 cafes by the end of the year, we'd be #1 in the nation. Well, right now, only Texas and California are ahead of us. Mm. So we're going to keep at it, and we're going to keep knocking them out. You know, it's just nice to have options. If you have dementia, there's not many places you can go and feel comfortable. I mean, there's not much sense in going to a movie because you generally don't remember one segment to the next.
So when did you find out?
It took me almost 8 years to get a true diagnosis.
But you knew something wasn't
right? I knew something was wrong because I was having a lot of problems being forgetful. But I had to make a trip to Long Island, and I found out that I could no longer understand the maps. And I got 4 or 5 maps. I went to AAA, got their triptychs. I got maps at the gas stations. I went to the library and looked up stuff, and I couldn't understand the map anymore. And I always was great at navigating.
Another thing is taking a normal trip and not being able to find your way back, like to the grocery store, and not remembering where your house is.
Oh, my mom had, although she never got an official diagnosis, but she was really inclined she'd get in the car and just go for a ride on a nice day. And about 6 o'clock, I'd get a call, Ken, I don't know where I am. How do I get home? And it was like, oh my God. So you know, it's
sad.
It's something that we can improve upon. Nobody knows how much somebody with advanced dementia really understands, but I have a tendency to believe that they understand a lot. It's just not sure. I think they have the same emotions inside, but they can't express it. I think they're hearing every word you say, so be cautious what you say to them. Just because they're demented doesn't mean they're stupid. And I think there's still an awareness that has to come, even in the industry itself, about how to talk with people who have cognitive impairment. It's not a lot different from trying to talk to a kid with autism.
My company specializes in habilitation therapy. We've found out that probably 80% of our clients have dementia, some kind of dementia. And I took the course at the Alzheimer's Association. It's called Training the Trainer. And we train our caregivers in this thing called habilitation therapy. And it teaches you how to respond to someone with dementia so that you don't create frustration that is going to happen if you respond in the wrong way. So we were talking about this morning about Ken's, it was your mother? Your mother? Your father. And for example, often people will miss their mother or their husband because that was the person that provided safety and assurance that they were okay. So they know something's not okay, enough to know, you know, they're cognitive enough to know something's okay, and they'll say, you know, my husband's coming home from work at 5 o'clock, I have to have dinner ready. And instead of saying, your husband's been dead for 5 years, and they've forgotten this. Mm-hmm. So they'll be extremely upset, and 10 minutes later say the same thing, and someone might say, he's been dead for 5 years, all over again, the horrible emotions. So instead of saying something like that, you would say, tell me about your husband. What did he do for a living? And it depends on the dementia and, how far it's progressed.
Yeah.
But in 10 minutes, they'll forget about their husband coming home. And you'll say, you know what? What was his favorite dish? Let's go make it now. So it's called living in their world. And it makes everything run so much smoother. They're not getting frustrated. They're not getting upset. One of my contacts, I'm trying to think of who it was. Oh, it's Teepa Snow. Teepa Snow is like a leading expert, and she puts out DVDs, and we use it in our training. What was I talking about? She
How
says,
to talk to dementia.
yes, she says you live in their world, you play along with them, and we call it playing along with them. Some people call it fiblets, but that's how you keep your life running smoothly. You reduce your anxiety as a caregiver, and you're not fighting with someone in a battle you're not going to win.
And there's a fine line between that and a thing called condescension. Because one of the worst things you can do for anybody is be condescending. But sometimes people, even in the industry, use condescension, that word.
Yeah.
Condescension,
Yeah.
and rather than the playing along. And there is a fine line, because one is very insulting to the individual. Whether they recognize it or not is another story. But that's a great example of
That's wonderful.
It's respect. It's keeping respect for someone regardless of what state they're in. And then there are other things like you maintain eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
You make a physical, hi, it's so nice to see you, Zaffie. You say their name because most people recognize their name, and then you reach out to shake hands. So it's eye contact, it's vocal, I'm saying your name, visual, and then I reach out to take your hand, and that's touch. As soon as you have touch, you've established a rapport with them. It's amazing. I've learned so much, and it's just wonderful. And talk about learning so much. We're doing a program in March. My company's Caring Companion Home Care is sponsoring it. March 22nd, First Parish Church in Kennebunk, 114 Main Street, 3 o'clock. And it is about...
it's a Saturday?
It's a Saturday, and we did it on purpose. So older people who don't like to drive at night can come. Younger family members can come. It's usually the children that approach us in my company. They can come because they're hopefully not working on a Saturday. And we're calling it Dementia Mapping the Journey, because it's the journey. It's not the horrible diagnosis and then that's the end. It's the journey. So we have Bill Kirkpatrick from Alzheimer's Association coming to talk about the actual brain and how the deterioration and the medical, new things that are happening medically. Then when we have Sally Tart coming from A Place to Start. And she runs it's amazing. She runs a nonprofit, it's been in business for a year, and she started it because her mother died with dementia. And that is a nonprofit that actually guides people. They attach to a family, guides people through the entire whole process, the journey, the whole process. She's got books that doctors have donated to her. She has a list of resources they can contact. She'll take them there. She'll take them to a facility when the time is needed and say, this is, and let me take you to another one, and what do you think, and how does your mother like this? Then our company, which is Caring Companion, and we're going to talk about home care and what we actually do. That's the first question I hear when people call on our number. It's our 800 number. Well, what exactly do you do? We're non-medical, but we do everything. We'll take your loved one on errands. We'll take them to the doctor. That's a big problem because people have to take off work to take their mother, their father to the doctor. We'll help them cook. We will do light cleaning. We'll take them to the beauty parlor, do their nails, all of the normal things so their activities and the things they love can continue. And in our interview with the family, we'll say, well, what was her passion? Did she paint? Did she read? Did she listen to music? We have one caregiver who, the man spoke French, and he was not well medically. His wife had dementia, so it was a two-part client. And our caregiver had spoken a little bit of French. So he brought French CDs in with him, and they sang together. Nice. I mean, just things like that can make a difference in somebody's world. And to be able to stay in your own home with your own surroundings, especially with dementia, because moving that person to a different place is alarming.
This is where I think the memory cafes play an important role, because most people who are worrying whether they have memory loss or not, dementia, don't even know that these services are available or how flexible an organization can be. And I mean, there are a lot of people out there who can help, but if you don't know what services are available, you may not know you can get help for something. Certainly.
And if it's not the right one, they can send you to another one.
Right.
They always can tell you where to go. Yes. So a lot of this, a lot of what we're trying to do with the memory cafes is connect people with organizations that do have those services. But there's so many. I look at it like the spokes of a wheel on a bicycle. There's so many spokes, so many things that you can do to get services, whether it's legal, medical, diet, whatever. There needs to be a hub where you can connect with all those spokes, because right now you're going from wheel to wheel to wheel, and you sometimes feel like you're spinning your wheels. We had I occasionally get calls in the evening from people who want, well, what do you do with the memory cafe? Well, what are you looking for? And after talking to folks for a while, you get to find out that they've been to support groups, they've been to the Savvy Caregiver program, they've been to the agencies on aging, and they're saying, well, now what? And so my job at that point is to help them connect to the answer to now what? Now what else should we be doing? Well, have you talked to an elder law attorney? Because most people have not. And it's a really critical time to get lawyers involved. Have you talked to a nutritionist? Have you get a second opinion from a neurologist on the diagnosis? Because I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of bad diagnoses out there. And a good friend of mine recently found out, after 6 years with a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, found out it's not Alzheimer's.
That's sad.
But it tells you that there is a strong need for more expertise in the industry. We only have 40 geriatric specialists in Maine. Only 40 for the entire state. But we have a population of people over 65 who is growing from 150,000 now. By 2020, that'll be 350,000. And we need more docs, but the actual number is declining because they're all retiring. So we've got a lot to do, but our effort is to stay with the grassroots at this point and try to give them the best information in as many places as possible, to give them an entry point, an access point in their local town, in a place that's friendly, hopefully.
I think education's important.
Oh, it is. Our time is passing, so is there one more thing that you'd like to say?
Just remind people that we're having that presentation. Our fourth person speaking is Susan Burton, who leads virtual dementia tours at Atria, March 22nd at 3 o'clock.
And our Biddeford Cafe, it starts next Thursday.
Yes, second Thursdays at 11 a.m.
At Elements, and this should be a good opportunity for people in Biddeford to.
Can you come late to those cafes?
Oh, absolutely. You can come late, leave early. It's your cafe. You can use it any way you want. We'll keep the coffee on the stove, so to say.
Because I'm always so busy, but if I get there late.
Oh, no problem. No problem. It's all about having a good time. So thank you for having us on, by the way.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming.
I'm glad you caught on to this new movement. There's 180 cafes across the country. We'd like to have 100 more here in Maine. So
that's great.
Thanks for getting the word out.
Good. Well, thank you again for coming, and it was a pleasure, and I learned a lot.
Good.
Even if we think we know a little bit, there's always more.
Unfortunately, that never stops. Stop cramming it into the brain.
Well, folks, I found this very interesting. It was a pleasure to have them. And I know it's something that's not going to go away, dementia and Alzheimer's. It's really sad for the family, too, not just the person that's suffering, but the family suffers.
Immensely.
I had a neighbor. She's passed now. when her Alzheimer's got really bad, she wanted to go home. And the police would find her out on the street. I'm going home. I'm going to find my mother, and I'm going home. Now, she's my age. And that's old. And one night, they locked her in her home to keep her safe. She jumped out the window. She jumped out the window.
Wow.
That's how bad she wanted to go home and find her home.
That's determination.
Yeah. And if you frustrated her, she really got angry.
I spoke to someone last week who actually took a resident down the street looking for her home. And she thought, how long am I going to walk with this woman? They got to the end of the road and she said, have you seen your home yet? And the woman said, no. And she said, you know what? It's kind of cold. Let's go back for hot chocolate. Didn't argue with her, didn't drag her back in, lived in the moment.
Well, this neighbor got mad with me when I was staying with her for a while. And it was part my fault, but she didn't know where her phone was, and she didn't know where this was, and I didn't know where it was either, and I kept asking her. And finally she said to me, this is my house. And she told me. And thank goodness her son-in-law came, and I ran out the door. I love her. She's gone now. I love the whole family. She was a nice neighbor. I feel bad. And that's one of the bad things about getting old. But we won't go into that today.
No.
Valentine's is coming up real soon. Have a nice sweetheart, love day, chocolates, candy, the whole works. And thank you very much for listening. See you next week. Love, Zaffie.